Want to learn more about clients going through menopause? Stay tuned. As a personal trainer, you're often told to niche down, find a demographic that you are passionate about, that you could speak to and feel like you could really work with on a daily basis. If you remember, in a lot of videos, podcasts, with KIPS, I talk about the grind of being a personal trainer. You want a niche, an audience that gets you up for that 5:30 appointment, makes you drive to the gym or wherever you're working and really pump out session after session to grow your career. A niche that has seen a big boom over the last 5 years has been working with clients going through menopause. And in this episode of the KIPS podcast, I'm going to be bringing on Debra Atkinson, the owner of Flipping 50, somebody that is a returning guest actually for the KIPS podcast. And she's going to be talking about the psychological, physiological changes that a female is going through with menopause. Also talking about the motivational factors. How do you speak to this clientele to get them to see that you do feel passionate about this niche? You do want to help this individual going through their journey, and also the marketing strategies behind it. Before we get to the episode, I want to touch on one piece that is mentioned in the podcast, which is the fitness consultation and how working with this niche, how it differs. It's important to remember that the fitness consultation or the orientation that you are performing as a personal trainer can be dictated by that individual sitting in front of you. If you have a system that you are going through, a protocol that you go from step A to step B to step C, and you are pretty rigid in that protocol, you might find it difficult to sign different individuals from different niches, especially if you're moving from one to another. As mentioned in this episode, Debra talks about the importance of the conversation-based consultation, meaning you're not moving to a movement-based or an assessment-based assessment or orientation, and really just trying to create that connection with that individual, making sure that you and that individual have a relationship, building a relationship, setting that foundation so that they see that you understand what this person is going through, and you're trying to find that piece where they can see how this training, your training path and your journey with them will benefit them at the end. Let's now get to the episode with Debra. Take notes, leave a comment on your favorite podcasting platform of what you thought, what you learned, and let's see what Debra has to say. Debra, for our listeners, can you give a brief background on yourself, how you got into the fitness industry and what you're doing now?
Absolutely. There's some common denominators here. I'm just realizing accidentally. I guess I accidentally got into the fitness industry and accidentally got into really what my deep niche is right now, which is so interesting. I started out in college as a graphic designer. I roamed around as a child with a sketch pad and pencils in my hand since I was in first grade. And somewhere about halfway through college, I realized that the summer before I went away to school, I started walking with my mom for the first time, doing self-initiated exercise. No coach telling me we're running laps to do X, Y, and Z so you can play, and it was the first time that I really felt what that is like to have a sense of stamina and strength and all the things that come with it. And by the time I left for college, pretty soon, sometimes my mom wouldn't come and I began jogging. I was a runner by the time I went to college. So that continued, fortunately. So I had a very healthy college environment and didn't drink a lot, actually didn't drink much at all. I told people I was diabetic because at that point you had to, that was peer pressure. I didn't want to drink, but that was not acceptable. And at some point I realized, I'm not sure I want to do this. Most graphic designers smoke and drink and stay up all night. And so I stuck one foot in physical education, which is the department was called at that point, left one foot in graphic design. By the end of the semester, due to some really great instructors, I changed majors and realized I'm a teacher and I want to empower people the way this has empowered me. Yeah.
And I will say it makes sense. If anybody has gone to your social media, it's very clean with the designs, and I'm not Sure, I didn't ask you prior to recording if you are the one making all the graphics and everything for it. But if you are, no wonder they look great. If you are paying somebody for them, I'm sure you are on them, making sure that it hits your market, and it's all professional, in my opinion. So I didn't know that about you. Makes sense, coming full circle to it. But for our listeners to jump into this episode and let them know what we're going to be talking about, we're talking about menopause, and it was great. In the preparation for this episode, we were discussing who in the fitness space, what type of professional are we trying to hopefully capture with this episode, and that they'll hear some things in this that'll hopefully hit that light bulb in their head and like, oh, I did have the wrong perspective on menopause, attracting these clients or even working with this audience. So I thought a good question to start with would actually be in the motivational space, because potentially you have a client that is given to you a lead. You have to call them and maybe they're just not as motivated. They are going through menopause. There are different changes in their body. What are some motivational strategies that a trainer could utilize that help them wrap their head around what this individual is going through?
So good. And to that, I want everybody to know that they have fewer dopamine receptors. So there is a reason for that lack of motivation, even in those who previously were, like somebody who I exercise. That's a part of my identity. They find many women, not all, every woman's journey is different, but they often will find it's flat. It doesn't give them the enjoyment it used to, and that's going to decrease motivation. But to that, if you, I think, can let her know it's not your fault, like there's nothing you're doing wrong. This is part of the physiology of change. Here's how we can mitigate that. And so you're getting on their team. And I think having them hear it's not your fault, like you're not doing it wrong. It's a part of physiology. Here's how we'll do something about it. And the something might be, pairing. So if you think dopamine, serotonin, and oxytocin, they offset cortisol, which can be a real benefit. But the ways to inspire that are, listening to music that you love, being out in sunshine, venting with a friend or with your trainer, having great rapport with the trainer and meeting them. Putting all the things together that you enjoy in addition to the movement may actually help amplify the feel-good hormones. We don't get as much of a rush as we used to. So that could be helpful. But I think the biggest motivation is the things that most women suffer from or with during menopause. Whatever point you're on in the continuum with, where are you symptom-wise? Some women have terrible symptoms, and they're the obvious, the hot flashes, the night sweats, the lethargy, the I'm not sleeping, I'm gaining weight, I can't get it off, nothing works, the belly fat, even if I didn't gain weight. Those are the most obvious things. And it's somewhere on the continuum for almost everybody. It may not be all of them. They may not be hard or high, but most women will experience a little something. And you don't know when. I know myself, I thought, I'm going to be immune to this. I've figured this out. Not going to happen to me. And sure enough, the universe will teach you the lessons you need to know for your students. Yeah. And so, it just, for me, perimenopause was perfect. And as soon as I hit menopause, it was like I fell off the cliff, And so, to all of you who are instructors and trainers, I think a lot of women feel like they're imposters because they can't figure it out for themselves. We're all having to figure out our own puzzle, and it's okay to be in it, rowing the boat with them, and be open and honest about that, as you're learning what are the solutions and sharing that. As long as you're not crying about it, it's okay to share that. Okay. Yeah. So I think the motivation is, it's both now to help offset those symptoms and to realize by telling stories, telling the story that you just heard from me, if you don't have a story of your own or telling a story of another client, that here's what I've seen. you might want to keep this in mind, because a woman who's like, my weight's okay, I think I don't need to lift weights or lose weight, they're not going to be as motivated as a woman who wants to lose weight. That's almost always the first thing, right?
Uh-huh.
But if you can keep her eye on just a little bit further forward in her future and then long term, when you're 60, when you're 85, what will she wish you'd done now?
Yeah, I like the language you used there with the connecting with the client. And that brought up a question in my head that whenever I'm thinking about attracting, but then once they are sitting in front of me, I think that is one of the areas that some trainers can hopefully reshape their process and understand that not all potential clients are the same. And that's with the consultation. Would you recommend reshaping a consultation? You know that this potential client's coming in, they are menopausal or they are perimenopausal, and oh, wow, this is very different than what I'm going through. Would you recommend maybe just an all conversation to create that connection, or a mixture of the conversation and some light movement?
Definitely. And I think a lot of conversation, to buy in trust, and less movement screen, less, show them and demo. Because number one, I think she's got to feel comfortable and safe that you get her.
Yeah.
And I would say respectfully to all trainers, so to the males who might be listening, to the younger cohorts that might be listening, you may have to work a little harder to buy that trust. She knows you haven't been through it.
Yeah.
And so there is that question of, do you even know what you're talking about? As smart, intelligent, degreed, credible that you may be, there is still that gap. So I think the more conversation that you engage in, and, we all, I think, know this innately, but there is that desire to talk. But if you can ask questions and let her talk, most of our people who we're interviewing feel we're much more brilliant if we've let them talk more.
Mm-hmm. Great tip right there. And I think that you're spot on with let them talk, let them share, let them feel like you are listening, because you should be as a trainer, actively listening, taking notes, comprehending everything that's coming towards you, so that connection starts to develop quicker, hopefully. And when that trust is there, then you could really showcase your skill sets as a personal trainer. That's everything that I was taking from what you're sharing right there. Listen, take your notes, try to get that connection going, and then hopefully you can get that trust going. I think the next question that we're building, I feel like in my head, we're kind of going through that, the lead consultation to now some programming. It just naturally happened. How would you recommend personal trainers that are unfamiliar, that this is something that they didn't know they needed to adjust, and that is their programming? How should they approach their programming, modify for this audience?
Such a great question. Right now, this is a hotbed, on social media. So if you are scrolling, there's a conversation going on, if you're paying attention, between programs, honestly, like mine, that were built for women in perimenopause and postmenopause, for their now and for their longevity. That, there's more research emerging that says men and women are not all that different, that there is nothing to say that muscle, bone benefits can't be derived in menopause and beyond. And so there are no limiters. However, when you break this down into any of the millions of women going through, and it's actually billion by 2030, everybody's experience is different. And so in my experience, it's not that cut and dried. I think all of that science should give us hope. And that's how we can relay it to that customer, that you can gain muscle, you can improve your strength and your lean muscle mass, which is going to help you offset any slowing of metabolism, and visceral belly fat benefits from it. There's no limiter being in menopause is not a limiter to gaining muscle. You are on HRT or you're not, whatever your choice is, that's not a limiter. However, what might be limiters are some of those side effects.
Yeah.
So a woman who isn't able to motivate herself to exercise because she's not sleeping, or she's not sleeping and she's not getting the reward she's pushing herself exercise-wise to get. We don't have growth hormone and testosterone because she's not hitting deep cycles of sleep. She's at risk for injury because of reduced collagen from estrogen. We do know that. And if she's not sleeping, that's compounded because she has no coordination and reaction agility skills. And we're asking her to do those things, So it's compounded. It may not be direct, but it's indirect. And I think we have to make sure we know the difference between what does the science say. Back in 2019, I first shared, there's a ACOG, American College of Obstetrics and Gynecology study that came out looking at 1 million women, it's a lot of women, worldwide in menopause, and found zero correlation with percent body fat and menopause. So, again, that should be hopeful for women. It may not land that way on the woman who's weight loss resistant and gained fat and feels like I've tried everything and it's not working. But what it should point out is that some of the things, the lifestyle habits we thought were correct are not going to work at this point in life. And that's where adrenals and cortisol does have to be a part of what we're manipulating. And yeah.
I want to take a step back here for some listeners, because I think that hot topic that you mentioned in there with hormone replacement therapy. Yeah. I feel like that has become something that might be controversial depending on what audience it's being applied to. But how are you seeing that research and that conversation being played out with this audience? Do you feel like women that are menopausal, that they're going through menopause or have menopause, they're more open to it compared to different audiences? I thought that you mentioning that word was a good area to come back to.
Yeah, I think women are much more open to it, and I think women over 60 are a bit angry that they were led to believe something that had been proven not true. The nurses study that came out and said hormone replacement is terrible, it's going to give you cancer, that was withdrawn. And yet, we never remember when the rumor was corrected and declared a rumor. We only remember the rumor. Yeah. And that's where a lot of women are. And they trusted their doctors who gave them advice based on even knowing that was discounted. And I think they're a bit angry that they didn't have all the choices presented to them. They didn't have options. And now they're asking, well, I'm 10 years beyond menopause. Is it too late for me? And the answer to that, by the way, is no. Someone would start very differently if they were working with a practitioner. And there are there's a broad continuum of answers that women are getting. If you know, as a trainer and a coach, that the functional medicine world and the Western world operate still very differently. Western docs get no training on hormone replacement. They get no training on menopause in medical school. Even our OBGYNs, which are the people we trust and lean into, until recently, we all didn't know this. Nobody said it out loud. Like, I got nothing on menopause when I was in medical school. And, no trainer did in a basic certification or even a 4-year degree either. Yeah. And so it's none of our fault, except now that we know. Now we can do better and say, I've got to do my homework. I need to know this. But I think we're seeing women more open to it, yes. And some they're knowing that it's a choice and choosing not to. And they don't have to choose it anymore just for symptoms. It's not just for women who are having terrible night sweats. It's also for women who are forward thinking and thinking longevity for muscle, bone, and brain health. And the studies seem to be good. I can tell you that we've had thousands of women come through programs and through our membership. Those that are on HRT have greater efficacy to the habits they're applying. And again, we don't know if that's the HRT is giving them better muscle results or bone results, or is it's reducing the fatigue, it's improving the sleep so that they can do the commitment that they have to the exercise that gives them those results. I don't think we know that well enough.
A quick break in this video. If you are needing CEUs, make sure that you head to the link that's in the description where you can find all our online courses that have pre-approvals with NASM, ISSA, ACE, AFA, NTSF, and with Nesta. We of course offer free content on our YouTube channel, but if you're needing professional ed, with some of you having the full amount to recertify, make sure you head to that link. And now let's get back to the video. I can say from a business standpoint that where we both live in the greater Phoenix metropolitan, and those businesses are popping up left and right, and it's booming, and it's most likely booming because it's working for their clientele. I feel like it is a very common question on a lot of the community pages that I'm on, that they're asking about hormone replacement therapy. And I know that we're talking about one demographic here, but these are clinics that are popping up left and right. And I think it's for that reason that they are helping their clientele. So great little area to come back to in this podcast. I want to switch gears here to our quick hits. And these are always fun. I started adding these into the podcast as a little, you react to them. And they are meant to stir the pot a little in some cases, but that's why I put them in there. And it's all for fun and hopefully gives our listeners some insight into these topics. So I'm going to read a topic to you or a statement, and you give your initial reaction here. Okay. First one, Debra. Nutrition is just as crucial as strength training for menopausal women.
True. Definitely true. And I think we as trainers need to really be on the forefront. We probably spend more time with them. We have better rapport with them. And there's less judgment, I think, from their standpoint, from potentially working with a nutrition or a coach. So I think opening up that avenue is great. And
I mean, that is, I feel like since I've been in the fitness industry, which is close to 20 years, nutrition has been such a debated topic. And yet it always starts as, we know nutrition is important, but yet we don't somehow incorporate it more, or we don't address it as an industry, that this is a necessity for trainers to be able to talk about nutrition. It's just one of those things, and I'm going on a small little vent there, but let me get to the next one. Weight gain is the most common concern for menopausal women.
From the women themselves, yes. It's not for the rest of us. I mean, I think if we look at it as not I want to fix this right away because of vanity and I don't like the way, that I think is not going to help us. But if we can look at this as this is a sign and a symptom of what's going on for her right now, and we use that to tweak the exercise. So she may be doing high intensity interval training and she's gaining weight. You know, we need to take that as we may be taxing her adrenals and her cortisol so much, it's backfiring. It's not giving her the desired result. It's giving her the opposite of it. And we just need to be willing to say it's not black and white here.
I like that. And especially for a little science lesson included in there. I can guess that some of our listeners will be like, what did Debra just say there? What just happened? Yeah. Last one. Spiciest one I put in here. Male trainers need additional training to work with female menopausal clients.
Yes, and let me explain myself, okay, before you start shooting. All right. By that, I think psychology-wise, And it's not, the science, physiology of exercise, you can learn physiology of menopause. But I think it's the psychology of what does that feel like? Because it's not just the frustration with wanting to lose weight, not being able to anymore, and not having control of the body, but she is in, pun intended, the heat of the moment of her life. She's got older generations and younger generations coming at her. She may have relationship changes happening within her own household. However that is, maybe simply becoming an empty nest, but there seemed to be a very high rate of divorce, and new relationships happening in midlife as well.
No.
All of that is compounding stressors that are related to the exercise results that she may be getting. So I think just looking at the psychology and realizing that, no, we're not therapists, but, what is compounding her inability to get the results she wants with the exercise or with the habits she had been doing? Because most often I think that's where we are when we first meet with that menopausal client.
Interesting. And I knew going into this episode, it would be an eye-opening and very knowledgeable, I know you're very knowledgeable in this topic, and you would be sharing things with me that would open my eyes for these things that I will admit. Of course, I do a little research for each podcast, and I do have my background in exercise science, but this is something I will admit that I'm not well versed on, and each response is just layering and layering and layering, and I hope the audience is getting the same there. We're going to continue with this thread about what this audience is going through and hopefully help trainers understand what this potential client or client of theirs is going through. I'm keeping with the thread here. What are the most common physical and emotional symptoms of clients that are going through menopause?
Physical symptoms, I think we touched on a little bit. So vasomotor control is not great. So hot flashes, night sweats. That is actually, a lot of that can be controlled by diet. So there is something to be said there for you need to know, and that's something you need to know. And then it's weight gain or it's weight loss resistance. I mean, women frequently gain and lose weight throughout their lifetime, but she's at a point where she's gained and she can't remove it in the way that she could at one point. So that frustration, relocation of fat to the midsection. So central adiposity, or what we know as visceral belly fat, the lethal kind. And, we want to get that off, and we want to help her identify why is that happening. Generally, combination of cortisol and insulin. Sleepless nights. We've got a decrease in progesterone, a decrease of melatonin. And again, we've got wired and tired going on. She can't turn off the brain. So exercise can help with that, but we've got to look at what kind and when, what time. Overall lethargy and fatigue, and those are the big ones. The last one of those I'll put in there. Well, two more. Mood, depression, and anxiety seem to uptick as menopause or after 60, and then low libido. And we don't ask that question. And so I challenge anybody listening to, when you went through a certification or you got a degree, because I know I never did this. I never asked about anything about pelvic health in intake forms, in a PAR-Q or a health history. It's not there. So asking about that really helps you identify a lot of women are prone to prolapse. And, if we have them lifting heavy and we don't prepare them adequately for that or teach them to breathe, that's probably one of the biggest things. So knowing we've got to be asking, looking, taking in signs and symptoms far beyond simple health histories.
I like that. One of the things that we were talking about before we hit the record was the booming of this market from the trainer perspective. A lot of trainers are entering it. And I think it's important that if you are considering entering it, you get some education under your belt. What are some resources that you would personally recommend? And you could, of course, plug your program here. I got to throw that out there. What are some resources that you dive into yourself?
Yeah, definitely. So, I read a lot and journals are coming out consciously. So, Menopause, the journal, Obesity Journal, but one recently came out in Nature, so things that are on my radar are all things related to menopause, but now we're making the very distinct perimenopause versus postmenopause, sarcopenia, osteoporosis, longevity, protein and protein optimization, muscle protein synthesis. Those words I've got them in search so that they come up on my inbox every day. So if there's something new out, I mean, a lot of times there's nothing necessarily worthwhile, but when there is, I want to know about it. And I want to know, I think the distinct thing you have to know is that not every article published in PubMed is a peer-reviewed journal. So go do your homework. And not every peer-reviewed journal publication or article is a randomized controlled study, which is what we want, or a double blind. Some of them are narratives, which means it's opinion. And many even educated people don't know the difference. So you should do a little homework. That, by the way, is a great blog on your site, because if you're talking about it, it's your customer assumes you're revealing things to them that they needed to know and didn't know. You're way ahead. Yeah.
Yeah. I like that because I think that is a very common thing in today's society. People just want, just research. They research this. But then if you were as somebody that has gone through any type of graduate program, you have to study the different types of research and be able to weed out what is good, what is not good. And those are very important to do, to make sure that when you are creating your own foundation of knowledge and you are trying to share your opinions on a certain topic, that they are rooted in evidence-based, and some are better than other. And that is the point of research. Some is better than others, and understanding how each piece of research was put together, it could really change your perspective on different. If you had 5 articles laying in front of you and they were all done a different way, it would change your opinion on each of those. I'm just putting it out there as somebody that has gone through that process. But very good, very fascinating with those pieces. I do want to, I feel like you kind of already mentioned one of these.
Okay, well, let me back up one step. All right. So, yes. So, for those of you who are interested in the Flipping 50 Menopause Fitness, I would be remiss if I didn't invite you. So, don't know when you're publishing, but we are open for enrollment a couple times a year. And one thing that we've done, and I want to tell everybody here why we do it this way, is we've coupled it with what we call Fitness Marketing Academy. And the reason is it is too easy to collect certification, certificates, and specialist notoriety, and then not actually put it to work. So our goal is to actually help people create a profitable business, and whatever that looked like for you. If you don't like the word profit, you can scholarship and charity, give all you want to, but you have power and voice when you have profit. Yeah. And so having the lifestyle you love is also something that fitness and health professionals have earned over decades of putting in their time, and your time has come.
Yeah, I like that. Yeah. And that's actually a great transition to me, because what I was going to ask you was about the language for marketing materials. As a trainer, I think that is something that I've talked about in different videos for YouTube and podcasts with your branding. When you have a niche, your language and the materials that you're putting out, it speaks to your audience better. I usually give a very broad example of, if you are trying to attract the active aging demographic, you're probably not to be talking about vertical jumps and becoming the best athlete of your life. They're going to go right overhead, or they're going to think that you're going to injure them. And that's not language that speaks to them. In your experiences, and Debra has been doing this, I think you mentioned since 2013, specifically, this is your audience, this niche. Yeah, that have been growing. And since 2013, seeing how much bigger it's gotten, what is that language that trainers are using that people, the audience members are latching onto, that people that are in this audience that hopefully that they read it and then they go, oh, I should be working with a trainer that specializes in this area?
Well, I think you might be surprised to find that it's not what we think. So often, I think leading with the word perimenopause, or I'm going to be a perimenopause coach. I have a young, was my intern last year, who is relocating, and she's going to, by cause, necessity, mother of invention, is going to go online, and she's going to be a perimenopause coach. And I'm like, of course you are. Of course you are. But I think the real thing that all of us should remember, no matter who you're serving or trying to, is lead with the problem. The problem isn't perimenopause, but the problem is weight loss resistance. It's like, what is it about this belly fat? It's, I'm not sleeping. So find your niche there. And if we lead with the problem and we explain it as well or better than our customer in the words they use, now we have rapport.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Great response. And exactly what I was hoping for with the question there. We are going to get to our podcast takeaways here. And this one, I did reshape it for our episode. And just a quick little background for our listeners, the way that I got our podcast takeaways, I was watching this documentary about this individual. He did 50 Ironman competition, or it wasn't a competition, he did the distances, 50 in 50 different states and all the states. And so he was once asked a question about what are 3 myths about triathlon training or Ironmans? And I was like, I'm going to switch that for this podcast. So Debra, what are 3 myths about training menopausal women?
They're delicate. They, can't do as much, and they shouldn't do HIIT because of high cortisol.
Yeah.
They, opposite would also be true. They need to do HIIT to get rid of belly fat. And I think it's that they all want weight loss. Some of them have a vision far beyond that. They're already thinking about when they're 80, who they want to be. And I think we need to hold that space out there. And actually, your longevity as a trainer will be greater if that's what you're doing. You're not helping them lose weight. You're helping them be who they want to be at 85.
Yeah, I like that. And I'm actually happy that you also mentioned the word HIIT. I feel like it's something that trainers want to try to make it so much more than it is. And some days it's good, some days it's bad. It's just like you could vary HIIT towards the demographic that you are working with. It doesn't have to be just one way. Any audience, I mean that, any audience can utilize HIIT, and research studies, they use the audiences that you think that would never be able to ever accomplish HIIT. It's just the way the parameters are set, are tailored to them. So I'm happy that you mentioned that word, because it's something that trainers just want to beat down when it can be utilized in so many different ways. Before we sign off here, Debra, can you give social media, website, and any upcoming events that you're going to be at?
Absolutely. So all social media, really, you're looking over my shoulder for our consumers, but we also share information for fit pros and health coaches there. Flipping 50 TV, Flipping 50 TV on YouTube, Facebook, and Instagram. I don't do TikTok. I don't point in. I can't do that. I'm there, but I'm negligent there. So don't follow me. And then website wise, flipping50.com for marketing and blogs, posts, podcast episodes directed to you, marketing and sales, fitnessmarketingacademy.com.
Great. And there will be information to find Debra in the description for this episode. Thank you, as always, for coming on, returning guest, coming on here. I forgot to mention that earlier, and really providing a lot of great education knowledge for our audience.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me, Tyler. You're a great interviewer.